What's up, everybody? Welcome into the CSN studios. I'm Sebastian Salazar, and this is Real Fantasy. Every genre and aspect of fantasy football will be covered on this show. You got a tough trade request? We'll help you. Need an outside-of-the-box pick for your daily team? We'll help you with that, too. Not sure who's going to get touches in places like Jacksonville or Cincinnati? We got you covered, and it starts with two of the best in the business. We have Kay Adams, who is on a daily fantasy heater, the likes of which the world has never seen. You can watch her Monday through Friday on the NFL Network. And Josh Norris of NBC Sports and Roto World fame, both on Twitter, at Josh Norris, at Hey Kay Adams. Guys, thanks for joining us. Let's get right to the quick hits. And we will start by looking at some split backfields, including a new one in Denver. C.J. Anderson out with an injury. Looked like Devontae Booker's job to lose, and he might have lost part of it. Enter Capri Bibbs, who appears poised to take touches away. Okay, so this is how desperate, how running back thirsty we are right now. We're talking about Capri Bibbs, who has 8 carries for 36 yards on the season as a fantasy option. Josh, what do you make of a Broncos run game that, by the way, just did next to nothing against a pretty soft Oakland run D?
And that's why I'm really concerned, because everyone else ran all over the Oakland Raiders except for the Denver Broncos. This is a team that opened the season against the Carolina Panthers with C.J. Anderson and ran all over them, something we weren't expecting. So now, Kay, it's not like I think that Capri Bibbs is relevant. I'm worried that Devontae Booker might not be as relevant as we thought he was. But as we always know, the New Orleans Saints are kind of the deodorant of fantasy football in terms of defenses. So if Devontae Booker gets it going this week, it really does help out. It cleanses last week's goose egg almost.
Yeah, Booker has not looked good for several weeks, averaging 2 yards per carry and some change there. And you saw Bibbs come in there with that 60-something yard touchdown run. He looked great and explosive. I don't think that he's necessarily a must start, even in this matchup against the Saints. But New Orleans is allowing 4.5 yards per carry on the season. I think it will be a great game for Booker. So if you invested in him, you picked him up, you used that waiver, that FOB budget on him, go ahead and play him as a flex, as a desperation running back too, with plenty of upside against the Saints. But I'm not loving Bibbs. He's not a must start. People are adding him, and I get it. That doesn't mean you have to roll him out there. All he's going to do is bring Booker's value down.
Guys, let's look at a similar situation in Cincinnati. They're coming off a bye, but in the 2 weeks before the bye against bad defenses, Cleveland and Washington, Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard put up almost identical numbers, a little bit more yards for Hill. So who's the better option moving forward? Is it Hill or Bernard? Kay, what do you think?
I'm going to give it to Hill. He's been wildly inconsistent per usual, but he's been dealing with nagging injuries that have him on the sidelines during the games. He's coming off a bye week, a much-needed bye week that will surely impact him. He got to heal up a little bit, and he has an extra day, right? He's going up against the Giants. As inconsistent as he's been, he's still averaging 5 yards per carry. He's still scoring touchdowns, and the Giants over the last 5 weeks are allowing 4.4 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns in that time. By the way, looking ahead, as we love to do to help you guys get your fantasy championships, the playoffs, he's got the Browns and the Steelers, both of those teams top 5 most generous to opposing running backs.
In a world that the running back position is so high variance and so volatile, I want someone that is consistent, Kay, and that is Gio Bernard. I know he might only get you 10 points, 12 points, depending on your scoring. I am perfectly cool with that at the running back spot. And this team has really transformed over the last 5 games, right? In the first 4, they only averaged, 70, 80 yards rushing? The last 5, 160 yards rushing in each and every game on average. There's enough to go around here. And with Tyler Eifert coming back, Kay, that might limit Jeremy Hill's effectiveness in the red zone and goal-to-go situations. I'm going to, again, lead towards Gio Bernard just because of that consistency.
Guys, we were just talking about the Broncos' backfield, but how about their defense? One of the best in the leagues. They're going to get a real test this week in New Orleans. The Saints, one of the NFL's most productive offenses, especially at home. So a lot of fantasy pieces in play in the Big Easy on Sunday. Kay, the list of Saints players owned in fantasy leagues, a long one. Who do you trust this week? Who do you not against the Broncos defense that, if we're being honest, got gashed a little bit by Oakland last week, at least on the ground?
They got cash on the ground, and that's how you attack this defense. You do not trust any of the weapons through the air, and that is Drew Brees, that is Derek Carr, that is Matt Ryan, who both had the two quarterbacks who had 500-plus yard games this season, couldn't put together 270 yards against this defense. They are stifling. It is a no-fly zone with or without a keep to leave on the road or at home. They are allowing the fewest points to opposing quarterbacks. You don't start Drew Brees. I'd rather start Trevor Siemian than Drew Brees.
Okay.
Yes,
What?
I'm saying
Are
it.
you serious?
Against top 5 defenses, his touchdown to interception ratio is 35 to 34.
Goodness.
I'm talking about Drew Brees here. What you do trust is the run game. You trust both Ingram and you trust Hightower, both RB2s with upside in the situation. You saw what Latavius Murray did, 5.3 yards per carry given up in the last 3 weeks. They're splitting the work. Both have value.
All right, guys, so going up against that Denver D, some of the Saints' weapons kind of sound like a risky play this week. There are other matchup issues around the league as well. Can you trust Jordan Reed against the Vikings defense? What about a guy like Devontae Freeman against an Eagles D that's given up just 4 rushing touchdowns all year? DeMarco Murray as well. What's his value in a potential shootout between the Packers and Titans? So, Josh, let's start with you on this one. Which fantasy stud and usual starter should maybe be sitting in Week 10?
Yeah, the Queen City crowd is not going to like me, and I'm going out on a limb here, Kay. How about Greg Olsen not being a top 10 tight end this week? And the reason why, the Kansas City Chiefs have not allowed a top 10 tight end, not just this season, but dating back to week 1 of 2015. It's because of that linebacker core and Derek Johnson. It's because of Eric Berry back there at safety as well. They can create some pressure up front. I don't think that Greg Olsen, and I won't blame anyone for playing him, right, because of what he's done, but I really think there's a strong chance he doesn't finish as a top 10 tight end this week.
Well, I'm going to upset New England and say to sit Julian Edelman. I don't know that you should be starting him at all, but up against Seattle, they allow the 7th fewest points to opposing wide receivers. They just hem up the passing game. The bromance with him and Tom Brady is not there. There are a ton of mouths to feed. Deion Lewis, another one to add to the mix there. Edelman hasn't hit 80 yards receiving this season in a single game. He's only scored 1 touchdown this year. Not that he was ever a great bet for touchdowns, but you at least wanted all of those receptions in a PPR league. It's not happening.
Okay, Josh, thanks so much for the info. Don't go far. We got Facebook Live answering folks' questions live in just a minute here on the show. But right now, let's head around the NFL, and we'll start in Charlotte. You just heard that starting Greg Olsen this week may be a bit risky. How about Kelvin Benjamin, whose numbers have been inconsistent at best? Nick Carboni at NBC Charlotte with more to start our cheat sheet.
Yeah, before the season, expectations were sky high for the Panthers, and part of that was linked to the return of Kelvin Benjamin. But I think his lack of productivity has got a lot of layers. First of all, let's not forget, he's coming off a major knee injury, and not everyone can rebound from that the way Adrian Peterson did. And it definitely slowed Benjamin down to start the year. He was not in football shape in the opener against Denver, but he still scored, which brings me to my next point. He scored in the red zone at Denver and at Atlanta, and twice against the Niners. All 4 of his scores this year are in the red zone, and that is why he's so tempting to start in fantasy. He's a freak show down there, nearly unstoppable. And he's been pretty good elsewhere, too. He's made so many catches, big catches in the middle of the field this year. But the Panthers have so many options when they get down to score, and it starts with Cam on the ground. Jay Stu's looked good upon his return, and Greg Olsen, of course, having a monster season. By the way, Sunday's opponent, Kansas City, they have 6 red zone takeaways, most in the league. So I'm not sure Kelvin's going to break out or not, but the problem with benching him is if the Panthers really start to turn it on, he can help do it. He can help do it in bunches.
All right, great stuff from Nick. Let's go Charlotte to Jacksonville, where the Jaguar season has been a disaster so far, especially with Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns struggling. But in their place, Marquise Lee has stepped up. Now, we wanted a Lee projection this week so bad our good buddy Brian Jackson of NBC4 in Jacksonville was willing to interrupt his vacation to give us his guess. Here it is.
The key for Marquise Lee always has been and always will be staying healthy. That's been something that he was unable to do over the first 2 years of his career. The only difference this season is he's actually on the field. In fact, his old offensive coordinator, Greg Olsen, used to call him the albino tiger because that's how rare it was to actually see him on the practice field and in games. So that's been the biggest reason why Marquise Lee has had a breakout season by his standards in his 3rd year. If he can stay healthy over the final 8 games of the season, there's no reason to think that he won't be able to top 1,000 yards receiving for the first time in his career.
All right, our special thanks to Brian. Enjoy the rest of that vacation, man. Next up, we head to Facebook to tackle your tough decisions. Maybe a late-season trade proposal or two. Who to start or sit? Kay Adams and Josh Norris are back to answer all those questions and more. And for most of the season, Jimmy Graham has been a forgotten man in Seattle. But now, he's playing like the old Jimmy Graham. And he's on my daily fantasy team. See who else made the cut. When Real Fantasy continues here on CSN. Glad to have you back with us here on Real Fantasy. Sebastian Salazar with you from the CSN studios. Now, if you've got a fantasy question specific to your team, this is the place to be. Every Thursday at 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time, Kay Adams, Josh Norris, and I will take all your lineup, trade, waiver wire questions live on Facebook. You can join us via your local CSN Facebook page. Again, that's every Thursday, 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Here are some of the best questions from this week's session. Enjoy. Guys, as we wait for the questions to trickle in, I got one here. You know, we're kind of late in the year. I'm wondering if we're past the spot where you can really find some treasures on the waiver wire. And if so, Kay, does that mean people have to start to be maybe a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more desperate with their trade proposals and what they're looking at there?
The trade deadline is right ahead, so I would be a little bit more aggressive, I guess. But you can always find people on the waiver wire, especially coming off 2 weeks where there are 6 teams on by a week. People drop guys because they have to pick up guys. I'm looking right now, guys like Rob Kelly, Kenneth Dixon, still very much so in play on the waiver wire. Trevor Siemian, who I love, Colin Kaepernick, who just went off last week. All of these guys are still on the wire. Lance Kendricks, if you need a tight end. There's Rashard Matthews is like less than 30% owned. This guy has 5 touchdowns in 5 games. There's still a lot to be had on the waiver wire. I urge people to not give up. It's week 10. You want to give up, keep going.
I think she's talking to you, Sebastian, when she says don't give up, because I know your record probably is not very good this season. Just picking up on that over the last few weeks. I think that there are 2 names that could really have big halves to the second half of the season. J.J. Nelson, the 3rd wide receiver now, or really the 2nd, I guess, for the Arizona Cardinals. He's seen the 2nd most snaps behind Larry Fitzgerald, and he's not just a vertical threat like he has been in the past. He can be used in the red zone, and he was against Carolina right before their bye. And then I really like James Starks. I'll keep bringing up that name because this team wants to be more balanced. I know they're allowing Aaron Rodgers to throw like 80% of the time, but when James Starks comes back, he's going to be the running back, Kay. And so I think he's absolutely worth a pickup and worth a roster spot on your bench.
Guys, we got a interesting and kind of long-winded trade proposal here from Raul. He says, I traded away Theo Riddick for DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins has the easier schedule and hopes for a turnaround. His RBs without Riddick would be Spencer Ware, Devontae Booker, Lamar Miller, Tim Hightower, James Starks, and Dion Lewis. That sounds like a lot of running back options for Raul. What do you think, Josh?
Well, I don't like DeAndre Hopkins this week, so once again, Kay, I'm going to be sneaky and say make this trade after this week. But that's not true because Theo Riddick's on a bye. So why not make this trade right now? I really like the guys he has on his roster, right? Spencer Ware is going to get the touches. Maybe not this week. It's not a great matchup against the Panthers. And Lamar Miller, we know, is going to get the touches. So yeah, I would make this trade. I think that we obviously know that DeAndre Hopkins is going to get the targets. But again, I don't like his matchup against the Jaguars this week.
All right, another trade proposal here from Guru Prasad. He said he's been offered A.J. Green for Jay Ajayi. Should he take it? Kay, I'll start with you here, but this seems like a perfect opportunity to sell high on Ajayi, no?
I don't think what he's doing, it depends on what you need. I would have to see who his other running back. Straight up, if I needed a running back, an elite one, yeah, I think I'd go with Ajayi. I'd trade away A.J. Green, and I'm sure Josh wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, both are top 5 at their position, possibly the rest of the season.
It's a pretty even swap.
Right, and really what this Dolphins offense has come down to is making Ryan Tannehill a game manager and relying on the running game. And that's what it should be, right? Because Ryan Tannehill is kind of a game manager of sorts in terms of distributing and not creating plays. And they will create plays with Jay Ajayi, who is leading the league, Kay, in 10-plus yard carries, I should say. And I think
you
that's
credit his offensive
sustainable.
line, and once they gel, there's really no stopping them with the holes that they're making for the guy.
All right, Josh Norris, Kay Adams. Guys, thanks so much for the time. To all our folks on Facebook, thanks for your contributions as well. We will see you next Thursday, 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Coming up, Matt Stafford and several other big-name quarterbacks are on the bye. If you need help under center, our experts are back with that help when Real Fantasy rolls on in just a moment. Stay with us here on CSN. All right, welcome back to Real Fantasy here on CSN. I'm Sebastian Salazar. You know what time it is. It is time for Fantasy Focus. Josh Norris, Kay Adams, and I will build our daily teams, all in the hopes of helping you make the right choices for Week 10. As part of that, we have our own little competition going here on the show. And right now, It is a dead friggin' heat. And here's why. Because week 9 was all Kay Adams. She had the most points any of us have scored in a single week all season long. All but one of her players found the end zone. Even the Chargers defense scored twice for her. Josh and I didn't do anything wrong. We both had strong weeks, but couldn't keep up with Kay. So all 3 of us now have 3 wins through 9 weeks. We are all tied up. Kay, I was telling you before, I was getting touchdowns from everybody, feeling really good about my team until I saw your team. That was a monster week.
Colin Kaepernick, it's as if the Saints defense is generous to opposing offenses. It's weird.
That's 2 weeks now that we've mocked your quarterback selection a little bit on this show, and you have nailed it. So if you're looking for a QB stream, Kay is the person to follow. All right, let's start this week with Josh's team. Last week, 7 of Josh's 9 players on the road. This week, 8 of 9 guys at home, and he's going heavy with the Cardinals. Arizona with a very friendly matchup against the 49ers. He's also going to try to save some bucks with Lance Kendricks and Darren Sproles. As for Kay's team, it actually looks a lot like Team Norris. Sproles, David Johnson, Mike Evans. Great minds maybe thinking alike here on Real Fantasy. But she's also picking Marcus Mariota against the Packers, Tyrell Williams as her third wideout, and Zach Miller at tight end. And then for me, for the 4th time this season, I'm putting Melvin Gordon on my team. Let's also go with the Carson Wentz, Jordan Matthews stack as the Eagles host an Atlanta team that hemorrhages passing touchdowns. Spending a lot of money on Jimmy Graham, but then I'm saving it with Chris Ivory. Okay, so let's check in on the teams here. And Josh went bargain hunting a little bit. You went bargain hunting this week. You found 2 of them, Lance Kendricks at tight end and then the Jaguars defense. Josh, those are kind of curious selections, at least on the surface. Why'd you go there?
Well, I love antique markets. I love flea markets, you know, going and trying to flip things and get a profit. And that's what we're going to do with Lance Kendricks. This is a tight end who leads the Rams in targets over the last 3 weeks, 29 in that span, at the stone cold minimum of 4,500 on FanDuel, an amazing value. And then with Jacksonville up against Houston, look, Houston's quarterback is Brock Osweiler. I could stop right there if I wanted to, but then Jalen Ramsey can shut down DeAndre Hopkins in many ways. And if Jacksonville can create some pressure, maybe a few turnovers, again, 4,100, almost the minimum on FanDuel, and that's why I can afford guys like a must-play like David Johnson.
Okay, when I look at your team, I'm most interested in your wideouts this week. You got 2 pretty obvious picks, Antonio Brown and Mike Evans. But then there's Tyrell Williams. His numbers up and down this year. Why do you like him this week?
Well, I was able to afford those studs because I went with a guy like Mariota, who low-key has multiple touchdowns in 5 straight games. When you're looking at Tyrell Williams, he's been inconsistent. Not a lot of people have a lot of faith in him. Over the past 5 weeks, it's been up and down, but 2 of those matchups were against the Broncos. Josh Norris thinks that wide receivers can have success against them. I don't. So if you remove those 2 games, I mean, he's averaging 6 catches for over 107 yards on close to 8 targets in those 3 games with 2 touchdowns. I love him in this matchup. And furthermore, if you can grab him in his season long, he's got Carolina, Oakland, and Cleveland in the fantasy playoffs.
All right, guys, on my team, I think a lot of people out there forgotten about Jimmy Graham. Quiet most of the season, but then he hit for 26 points last week against my beloved Buffalo Bills. Josh, I kind of feel like I'm chasing performance a bit with this pick. Do you think he's worth the $6,600 price tag against the Patriots?
Yeah, I don't know about the $6,600 price tag, but man, he's having an amazing season. Like, Jimmy Graham is coming back from microfracture surgery like an absolute beast. I mean, he is rewriting history along with Jadeveon Clowney like that. Okay, those one-handed catches he brought in are absolutely amazing, and he's easily the best red zone option in that offense. So with Russell Wilson getting healthier, I think Jimmy Graham is a very, very solid play against the Patriots.
Russell Wilson is healthier. Their running game is not with that offensive line. Christian Michael could barely get it done. He's the only show in town right now making those Brandon Lloyd-esque circus catches in the end zone.
Yeah, I heard Russell Wilson in a post-game show kind of gushing over Jimmy Graham. Hard to believe that they won't hook up again.
He was a groomsman in his wedding,
this
Bash.
week.
There's that, too.
There you go.
Wow.
The inside scoop from Kay Adams. All right, guys, crystal ball coming up. But before that, let's hear from our resident general manager, Charlie Casserly, who he himself heard that Josh was knocking Melvin Gordon. Well, Charlie loves the San Diego back and had this to say on Gordon and Josh.
What's the difference with Melvin Gordon this year than last year? Number one, he's healthy. He's had a whole year where he hasn't had any injuries, and I think he's more used to the speed of the game in the NFL. How's he playing this year? Well, the stats show he's doing great. I saw it in preseason. I saw a guy with speed to go all the way anytime he touches the ball, which is what he was in college. He's an aggressive downhill runner with big-time speed. Difference in the offense this year for the Chargers? It's Melvin Gordon. He's giving him a running game.
All right, one thing is clear. Don't come after Melvin Gordon or Charlie Casserly is going to come after you, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and read what I said about Melvin Gordon when he came out of Wisconsin, and I love Melvin Gordon. Look, he has the highest market share in the league of rushes inside the 10 and with goal line situations, and that's why he's been so good this season. Top 7 running back the rest of the year.
All right, guys, crystal ball time here on the show. Andrew Luck, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, all on the bye this week. Kay, hit me with another QB option.
You know I already love Trevor Siemian going up against a team that's allowing over 300 passing yards a game. The Saints are very generous. Alex Smith was a top 12 quarterback against the Saints. Colin Kaepernick just went wild on the Saints last week. Got to go Siemian.
No love for my daily play, huh? Carson Wentz, 40-plus throws the last couple weeks, 23 passing touchdowns allowed by Atlanta. I thought that would be a sweep here.
Carson Wentz is fantasy irrelevant, honestly, Sebastian. He really is. You should cut him if you can, moving forward. I'm going with Jay Cutler as a streaming quarterback, and I'm not feeling great about it. Probably like Case, not feeling great about Trevor Siemian. But up against Tampa Bay, we know that Tampa Bay can shut down the run. So in that case, targeting Alshon Jeffrey in the red zone and even on long plays might be Jay Cutler's best path to success in fantasy points.
I like Cutler and Siemian over Dalton. That's what I just said it.
All right, guys, real quick, one name gaining popularity, Rashard Matthews. He's not getting a ton of targets, but he's been real efficient. Is he a thing, and what does he have to do against the Packers defense? What do you expect there, Josh?
I wouldn't say he's a thing because this is a team that benched Rashard Matthews earlier in the year for Andre Johnson, right? I do like that he's making the most of his opportunities and is their best red zone option, case. So of those wide receivers, I would start Rashard Matthews.
He's got 5 touchdowns in 5 games. I would say that's a thing. He's averaging 7 targets over the past 3 weeks because Andre Johnson retired. That is a thing. The Packers are a thing because they're a great matchup, and he's got the Colts and the Bears in the next 2 weeks after that. Love him.
All right, as they do every week, Josh and Kay have educated you and made me feel worse about the little that I know about fantasy football. That's it for us here on Real Fantasy. Don't forget to join us every Thursday around 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time for Facebook Live. Get your questions into the experts then. For Kay Adams and Josh Norris, I'm Sebastian Salazar. Thanks for watching, and good luck in Week 10.